I think the biggest thing was people wanted more of what we did last game. We sort of did a really good job of sort of integrating the fighting and the traversal stuff, and so the biggest thing we heard was, well, there's a few places where I can't do that, right? There's a few places where I can't shoot, there's a few places where I want to be able to climb, so we brought that in. We really wanted to add that into this game, so now all those places where you couldn't shoot or climb before, we are now allowing you to. So new moves like you can jump backwards out around ledges, new moves like you can actually shoot when you're on a balance beam, you can shoot when you're shimmying along a wall. All those things are allowed to do in this game, which we weren't before.
As we've added in the ability for Drake to take on multiple opponents at once, as we've added in all of these little contextual moves where he might snatch up a bottle from a bar top mid-brawl and bash someone over the head with it, or even like the new stealth moves that we've added, things like the stealth drop down where he can fall onto an unsuspecting enemy from above. Our goal has always been to make sure that we keep the interface nice and simple and compact. We do little things in code behind the scenes to help the player out where necessary, all the while making sure that it's still embedded in the player's skill.
The other biggest piece of feedback was people wanted to be able to expand the melee set, and so that was another big thing we wanted to bring to this game, is more and more brawl mechanics, like a ball brawl kind of style fight is what we wanted to have the feeling of this game, rather than last game where it was just a single one-on-one combat.
We are always very attentive to the balance of the elements that Uncharted is made up of. You know, we're very keen to put lots of cinematic action into the game, and really into the game to embody it in interactive gameplay.
People are surprised by this because we are such a story-driven franchise, but we often start from completely just thinking about gameplay and technological challenges, right? So the first thing we thought of with this one was, where have we not been and what would be really hard to do? And so we thought sand and desert immediately, because it's incredibly hard to render realistically and think about all of its surface properties and flow and displacement, as well as all sort of the visual properties of it that make it so beautiful. And so, ironically then, so you start with something like sand and say, well, where can we go? And you look at all the deserts of the world and think, well, what hasn't been very explored? I mean, narratively as well as literally, right? And the Arabian Peninsula and the Rub' al Khali Desert was one of the first things that occurred to us, because usually people go to the Sahara, or they're going to Egypt, you know, it's kind of the gimme, right? And people haven't really explored this place, but it's this amazing, 250,000 square mile area of the Arabian Peninsula. It's almost impassable. It basically is impassable. It's so inhospitable that even the nomads just go around it. And so it's really is one of the most or last unexplored places on the earth. And then as you dig into it, then you start discovering that there's all these stories of a lost city somewhere in that desert, and it's got all these different names and tied into all these different mythologies and related to Solomon and the Queen of Sheba and the Arabian Nights, and this idea that there was this fabulously wealthy city, but that was struck down by God for its wickedness and just swallowed up into the sands. But it's out there for someone to find if they can find it. But of course, with much danger associated with that, not only just crossing the desert, but the city itself is meant to be a dangerous place. And so we look at that and think, well, that's kind of cool. And what kind of historical figures could we tie into? Because we're digging into Nate's past, we thought we want to go back to Sir Francis Drake, because that's a big part of his identity, is this assumed supposed ancestor of his, Sir Francis Drake, and whether there really is a relationship there or not, and how he sort of clung to that. And then but then crisscrossing that exploration of the 16th century figure with realizing that there's a tie into this 20th century figure, T.E. Lawrence, and that's how that gets us into the Arabian Desert. And he's one of these explorers that he christened this area the Atlantis of the Sands, this lost city, and had a lot of colleagues and contemporaries that tried to find it and never did.
The upgrade from Uncharted 1 to Uncharted 2, we actually revved the engine. We called it Naughty Dog Engine 2.0. I don't think we're actually going to rev it this time. It's actually a very similar engine in a lot of. I mean, it basically is the Uncharted 2 engine with all these crazy tweaks to it. I mean, I guess you probably could say that it's the new version, but it's basically a more refined version of the Uncharted 2 engine. So it allows us to put more stuff on screen, get better rendering in there, new particle systems, like the fire. We never could have done that last game. One of our guys just sat down and said, well, I really want to do this crazy fire thing, so I'm going to figure it out, right? So he wrote a whole new particle system just to do that, to get it onto the PlayStation 3 and run it. So the tech is sort of a refined version of the Uncharted 2 engine. And you're going to see more and more cool stuff out of it, but it's just because we've already got this really solid base, so we can just push it even harder and figure out where the best savings are, because we kind of know what we're doing now.
That's all real pretty, but what the hell's it mean in English?
Obviously, Victor Sullivan, Drake's mentor and sort of father figure, sort of corrupting influence, whatever, has been an important part of the franchise from day one. And but I think we didn't even realize how much people loved this character until after Uncharted 3. People thought they'd been robbed, there wasn't enough Sully, right? And so we thought, well, this time let's just dig into that. We want to dig into Drake's past more and sort of why he is the person he is, and that has to do with Sully. And we thought it'd be more interesting and explore this relationship. It's almost sort of father-son type relationship, but it really is more of a partnership. And I think, you know, how could we dig into that and sort of test the bonds of that relationship in our story in interesting ways, as well as giving people more Sully, which is what they want.
We are not going to do co-op in single player. There will not be a cooperative experience going through the single player game. That's sort of all we can talk about for multiplayer, other than the fact that we're going to blow out multiplayer and make it a huge thing. We are going to have we still have co-op in multiplayer, and that's going to be a really different experience this time. I think it'll be really, really cool. It'll feel really, really nice. But yeah, because we're so story driven and because we have all these things that we feel like we want to tell this interesting story in a single player kind of way, we're still going to stay with the one player only in single player campaign.
We're constantly looking for new ways to take a mix of components that might be familiar and put a new spin on it. And I'm happy to say that we feel like we're very far from exhausting the possibilities of this game style.
So Uncharted 3 will be out on 11/1/11, November 1st, 2011, on PlayStation 3 exclusively.